Welcome to All Things Seniors, a podcast for caregivers. If you are a caregiver or someone who is looking to learn about challenges and solutions pertaining to seniors, you are at the right place. We created this podcast to support all caregivers so that while you are driving, cooking, or working out, you can listen to those episodes from this podcast which pertains to your needs the most. In each episode, we will have an industry expert who will share their wisdom and knowledge with you to help you better serve your loved ones. So let's dive right into All Things Seniors.
Hello and welcome to All Things Seniors. Did you know that cohousing originated in Denmark back in 1960s? And today some 50,000 people in Denmark live in cohousing. Although in Canada, we have less than 20 cohousing projects, mainly in BC, but there are over 150 such projects in US and maybe more now. Building communities and avoiding loneliness is something as a society we all need to do, and cohousing definitely helps. And we are glad that today we have Grace Kim, who is an architect for over 20 years experience. And she is internationally recognized expert in cohousing and the art and craft of creating communities. She has a great TED Talk, which I encourage everyone to go and watch as well. Some great content there. Grace, welcome to our episode.
Hi, thank you.
Grace, tell me, as a community, as a country, what we should do more in terms of spreading the message of co-housing a bit more?
I would say sharing the message of co-housing, what we could do more is just acknowledge that it is a housing model that works for a variety of people. And I think as a society in general, co-housing helps us to remember the humanity in all of us and to really be connected with each other in a more meaningful way. So I guess for folks to just be aware of co-housing, talk about it, look into it. I think even if people aren't interested in co-housing specifically as a housing living situation, to really think about the root of it, which is about building community and building social networks, because some people might not choose to live in co-housing, but I think it's important that people remember that they need to have social connections with people outside of just their immediate family, especially if they're seniors living alone or seniors living far apart from their family, that they need to continually build these connections and nurture these connections. And that's not an easy thing to do in our isolated, suburban single family settings that many people live in North America.
So tell me, in terms of having support, just like in an assisted living facility, there could be some support from the perspective of somebody cooking the food or transportation options available. Sometimes, people in the age, 70-ish or above, they won't be able to maybe drive by themselves. So how does that support exist, if it exists, in a co-housing facility?
So seniors can be supported in co-housing by, you might not need to rely on leaving the property to get your socialization or your meals or the things taken care of. I guess in senior living situations, there might be a van that comes once a week to take seniors to the mall or to the movies or to something, or that they bring in people and they have activities. I would say in co-housing, there's lots of things that happen during the week, whether it's community meals. And I also think the setting also is important to think about. In our community, we're a very urban community, so it's very walkable. And not very many households actually even own a car. And so it's often times, a community member will say, I'm going to go watch a play or hear some music at a local theater, and ask who wants to go. So there might be, 5 or 6 people that decide to do that. And they just walk or they carpool together. We often have a call out for, hey, I'm running to Costco. Does anybody need anything? And so, 2 or 3 people, hey, I need this or that. So I can imagine a senior living in co-housing who has more mobility limitations. They might say, hey, I need to go to the pharmacy. Is anybody going that direction? Or I need to get some groceries. Can I tag along with somebody else that's going and get a ride back? Or, can somebody pick up these groceries for me? So there's lots of ways to get things accomplished. I think about we've had, since we moved in, a few people that have had surgeries or injuries or illness that has kept them homebound for weeks, if not months. And so, thinking about the network of how different people get their needs met, whether it's getting their, pet walked or getting their medication picked up or being driven to physical therapy or a doctor's appointment and things like that. So I think if it was a long-term, consistent need, that might be challenging, meaning I don't think co-housing is a good model or an option if a family member needs a lot of assistance or is permanently not able to drive or not able to do certain things. There is no staff, so you would really be relying on the neighborliness of your neighbors. And when you have a long time period for that social connection and social capital to be built, like if you think about social capital as a piggy bank, if you move into a community and you're fairly young or just more able-bodied, right, and you're able to help out with somebody else's needs, or just even be in community together for many years before you actually have your own needs, it's easy to sort of imagine, people putting money into your social capital piggy bank over time, whether you're giving somebody else a ride or making a meal for somebody or, just sharing a cup of tea and things like that. So that over time, your piggy bank is full. And so when you need help, it's easy for you to ask because there's a trust and relationship. And it's also easy for people to say, oh, this person needs help and I can help them. I think family members should be very wary of looking at a co-housing community and saying, oh, I'm going to, park mom and dad there and expect them to take care of them. That I think is something to be very wary about. And most co-housing communities will be very cautious about that. So it's a good situation for seniors and elders who are active and able to contribute and participate in a meaningful way. It's not a good situation for somebody that needs a lot of care.
Makes sense. So in a way, it is kind of a position between somebody who is moving out of their home while they were completely independent and before moving to a very dependent facility like a long-term care or a nursing home. Kind of a way, this is a substitute to a assistant living like 55 plus housing option, so that yes, you need some help from rather than a transportation company or a cooking company, rather you are getting that help from your neighbors, but at the same time you are still able enough that you can provide some of your own input as well. No, that sounds good. You mentioned something during the conversation that, for example, if somebody is going to supermarket and they make a call out if someone else needs something, how does that communication happens? Is there a microphone where people make an announcement on, or how does that work out?
Yeah, I think every community has their own way of doing things like that. Ours is small enough that we manage it through Facebook, and we just have a private page that only the 9 families have access to. And so it's pretty common that people will put a post that says, I'm going to Costco tomorrow, and then say what time, and then folks will send a response. There are times that I've posted, I need 2 eggs. Is anybody home right now? And within like a couple minutes, somebody has posted saying, I have eggs, come down. And at the same time, somebody's knocking on my door with like 4 eggs. So it can be pretty immediate.
Very nice. Yeah.
And in other communities, it's different, right? Because if there's a group of 30 families, Facebook might not be the mechanism. Some communities have an internal list serve or an internal intranet. So there's different ways that every community manages it, but there is some sort of communication process. And some of them even have like going way back, like phone trees and things like that. But I think most of it's online these days.
And also, is there a leadership mechanism, just like there are boards which govern a condominium or an apartment block? Is there also a leadership team who makes decisions?
Right. So because co-housing it's self-governed, so there's not a third-party property management or a sort of entity, and most of them are legally incorporated as some sort of, I don't know, a homeowners association or some sort of entity like that has some reporting functions. Most of them if they are a legal entity acknowledged by their state, they have some requirements for elected officers. But in practice, it is a self-governing group that might operate on consensus or sociocracy or some other sort of dynamic governance model. And so it's usually that there's like an executive team or a executive circle, whatever you want to call it, depending on the model. But there's sort of a core group of people that kind of coordinate the overall efforts, but there are committees or circles or teams, whatever you want to call them, for the property, the grounds, right, in terms of landscaping and maintenance. There's somebody that's in charge of community life, or a group that's in charge of finances, a group that is in charge of the community meals, of the kids team, of the, I don't know, there's lots and lots of different teams and groups. And there's, usually some sort of requirement or expectation that adults will be involved with 1, 2, 3, or 4 teams, depending on the size of the community. And so there's an expectation for work in that way. And every community does it differently. Some, it's a required number of hours per month you do. Some of it is more, you just expected to participate on these teams, and the teams determine how much work they do and how often they meet and things like that.
This is very valuable information, I think, for listeners who are right now considering different housing options for either themselves or for their elder family members. All the insight that you have shared must give them the pros and cons kind of a housing or co-housing solution. So thanks for sharing that, Grace. Listeners, if you liked today's episode, please subscribe and review it on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to the show. This way you never miss an episode. Also, check out show notes where we will put a lot of the things that Grace shared with us today. And, we will identify those links from Google, and, we will share it with you over there. Also, we will have some behind the scene pictures for you on our Facebook page, All Things Senior. So definitely check that out. Again, thank you, Grace, for your time today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And thanks for listening, you all. I'm your host, Rafiq Punjani, and we will be back next week. Until then, ciao.